Hello, welcome to Comic Tropes. I'm your host, Chris. So, the movie The Eternals just came out, the latest MCU movie, and overall, I thought it was pretty good. I wouldn't be able to call it top tier within the Marvel movies, but I liked it because it offered a bunch of stuff that was pretty different. Non-linear storytelling, some really dynamic conflict within the main characters. Also, instead of sort of chasing after a MacGuffin, just some sort of a gadget against a villain, this one had more of a central mystery to uncover. So it offered several things that were different. Definitely think it was one of the most beautiful looking Marvel movies. The cinematography was excellent. Director Chloe Zhao insisted on doing location filming throughout the world. I think that really paid off. Some really, really great stuff there. But the purpose of this video, let's talk about where it diverged from the comics. Let's talk about the comic book origins, compare that with the movie, just sort of a fun, quick video for people curious about that. Without any further ado, let's get into it. The Eternals debuted in July of 1976, written and illustrated by Jack Kirby, who had previously worked on stories about gods with titles like Thor and New Gods. Interestingly, the Eternals movie does have a full credit for Jack Kirby. In the comics, the Eternals are godlike creatures that walk amongst humanity and look like humans. The book explains that mankind was evolved from apes to humans by space gods called the Celestials, who did this on many planets. The Celestials experimented on pre-humanity and created three races: humans, Eternals, who are longer lived and have access to cosmic powers, and deviants, who were genetically unstable and would look monstrous, but also had access to powerful and unpredictable abilities. A quick note, Jack Kirby was tremendously influenced by the film adaptation of 2001: A Space Odyssey. He made this comic book based on the Stanley Kubrick movie, which was in turn based on the Arthur C. Clarke novel. This was something Jack Kirby just tremendously cared about. This is an adaptation he made, and then he did an ongoing series for Marvel that just talked about these unknowable space gods that were evolving humanity. And I think that that's where the Celestials come from. The Eternals were plentiful enough to populate a city that they called Olympia, and eventually they set up some other bases on Earth. The leader of the Eternals was in contact with the Celestials and pledged to keep the world safe from the Deviants because one day the Celestials would return to judge the planet's worthiness of existing. The Celestials return in the first issue of Kirby's comic and silently stand by waiting to judge them for the entire 19-issue run. The book was canceled after issue 19, and writers Roy Thomas and Mark Gruenwald later wrote a conclusion in Thor, where Asgardians, Olympians, and Eternals team up to battle the Celestials and make them leave Earth safe. The Eternals' origins and the Celestials' mission are both tweaked in the film, but I'll get to that towards the end of the video to keep spoilers for later. The main characters in the comic were Ikaris, Sersi, Thena, and I don't think you could really argue that any of the other Eternals introduced were main characters. They were all supporting characters or even cameos. But let's compare and contrast them with the film, and I'll just say from this point forward, spoiler alert. Ikaris is both the protagonist and viewpoint character in the comic, working with archaeologists who uncover evidence of the Celestials before revealing to the humans his true nature. Ikaris learns that the Celestials are returning to judge humanity, and he slowly gathers his fellow Eternals. There is Ajax, who communicates with the Eternals, and Sersi, who is a party planner deeply connected with humanity. Thena is their greatest warrior. Others that are slowly introduced include Zurus, their leader. You may notice that their names sound similar to existing mythological gods. Zurus is Zeus, and Thena is Athena, for instance. The explanation in the books is that the Eternals have been around for so long they helped inspire humanity's myths. You may ask, but don't gods like Hercules, Zeus, and more exist within Marvel Comics? Yes, but originally, the Eternals book was not explicitly set within Marvel continuity. Characters referenced Marvel characters as being characters. The Eternals were later folded into the main continuity, and some issues of Thor explain that the Olympian gods allowed the Eternals to portray them on Earth. In the film, it's explained that Sprite has told stories over the centuries that have worked the Eternals into human mythology. Zuras does not appear in the film, nor does Domo, who helped communicate with the Celestials. Instead, in the movie, the Eternals have a spaceship named the Domo. In the movie, it's explained that the Eternals were created by the Celestials, but not on Earth. Instead, they are synthetic beings sent to keep the Deviants under control. In the comics, the Eternals have access to the same abilities: super strength, flight, energy beams, speed, durability, telepathy, and transmutation. Some of the Eternals focus their skills on one area more than another. Sersi, for instance, focuses on transmutation. Druig focuses on mental powers. In the film, the Eternals seem to have their abilities divided up and are unique. Ikaris is the only one who can fly, for example, and only Sersi can transmute one thing to another. Now let's break down the differences of the Eternals themselves from their comic book counterparts and their film interpretations. For the record, the Eternals has never been a bestseller. There's not that many Eternals comics out there even. So while there are some changes, personally, I'm totally fine with it. I don't think that anyone is super invested in Eternals lore. I also think that some of the changes help give some different points of view and create some additional interesting conflict when it comes to how the Eternals each view their mission that they were given by the Celestials. Ikaris has been the lead of the various Eternals books, and Sersi has always been a co-lead and also served on the Avengers for a while. After those two and warrior Thena, the film uses 7 more Eternals, some gender-swapped. Ajax is now Ajak and is the prime Eternal instead of Zuras. Her ability is to heal. Makkari was a white guy in the comics and is a deaf black woman in the film. Same power though, super speed. Druig was a bit of a jerk in both the film and the comics, and doesn't believe in the Celestials' mission as much as the rest. In the comics, he tried to shoot a Celestial with their own gun, and in the film, he breaks off and uses his mental powers to keep one village at peace for 20 generations, against the Celestials' command to only use their powers against deviants. Phastos was barely in the comics, and in the film, he's a gay black man that is also an engineer. Gilgamesh had a small role in the comics as a forgotten warrior. In the movie, he helps protect Thena, who we'll talk more about shortly. Sprite in the comics is an obnoxious, permanently 12-year-old boy. In the film, that's been changed to a girl. In both, Sprite desires to be able to grow older physically. In the Neil Gaiman 7-issue series from the early 2000s, Sprite altered reality by amplifying his illusion powers with the Dreaming Celestial's power. In the movie, Sprite betrays her family because of how unhappy she is to be permanently youthful, but ultimately is granted the ability to become human and age. Kingo in the comics was a samurai who now plays a samurai in Japanese B-movies. In the film, Kingo's role is greatly expanded, and he now lives his life as a Bollywood movie star. In the film, Thena is constantly battling her jumbled memories and is going mad with a disease the Eternals have called Mod Wirir. In the comics, Sersi gets this disease, but is able to be cured with a mental bond established with her then-lover, Dane Whitman the Black Knight. In the film, Sersi is dating Dane Whitman, and it's hinted that he has a secret family history. Thena's bond with Gilgamesh in the film mirrors the Sersi Black Knight bond from the comics. Thena is also taunted by the deviant Crow in the film. In the comics, Crow has a much larger role. He looks like a devil, but ultimately forms a strong bond with Thena, and they work together to protect Earth from the Celestials. It's purely adversarial in the film. Sersi is very similar in both film and comic, but in the comics, she's a party planner. In the movie, she teaches. In the comics, Sersi did have a close relationship with an anthropologist professor, and the Eternals revealed their existence to him and his class. In the movie, Sersi is in a relationship with fellow professor Dane Whitman. Finally, we'll talk about Ikaris, and there will be movie spoilers here, so if you don't want to know that, stop now. In the comics, Ikaris is a generic superhero good guy, dedicated to doing the right thing. He's the most powerful Eternal. He presents as such in the film, but there is also the addition of a story where he and Sersi have been in love for thousands of years. They have no such relationship in the comics. But most importantly, there is a twist in the film that reveals Ikaris knows the Celestials are coming to destroy Earth, and he keeps that a secret from Sersi and the other Eternals. He is loyal to the Celestials. He even helps kill Ajak to keep this secret. In the comics, the Eternals just judge civilizations as to whether they are fit to continue. But in the movie, the Celestials have a more devious plan. They birth new Celestials by having them grow within a planet and feed off the energy of the population, eventually destroying their planetary womb. This comes from the Marvel comic Earth X, an alternate universe story that reveals there is a Celestial using Earth as a womb. The film explains that the Celestials create deviants to kill off apex predators on a planet, to thus allow the inhabitants to grow and thrive, and then speed up the birthing process. The Eternals are sent to control the deviants from, in turn, feeding on the normal people. And then the Eternals are mind-wiped to do this again and again for the Celestials. The main Celestial is Arishem. In the comics, he's a judge. In the film, Arishem's head design was taken from one of the other Celestials, Esson. The deviants are mindless monsters in the movie, but it establishes that if they kill an Eternal, they gain its powers and some additional intelligence. With Ikaris' help, they kill Ajak and later Gilgamesh. There is also the Eternal in Earth, Tiamat, who in the comics is known as the Dreaming Celestial because it is asleep. In the film, it is being awoken. Finally, in the comics, the Eternals are always able to join together to form a Gestalt being known as the Unimind. In the movie, they try to harness both Phastos' engineering and Druig's mind control powers to form the Unimind, but it is ultimately unsuccessful. Those are the main differences for the characters. The film ends with half of the Eternals going into space to find Eternals on other planets and explain to them what the Celestials are actually doing, and half of them stay on Earth because they have lives there. Sersi, Kingo, Phastos, they all stay on Earth. So does Sprite, but she's turned human. But then Arishem shows up and abducts Sersi, Kingo, and Phastos and says that he will be back to judge the Earth. So that's how the film ends, but we get 2 post-credits sequences, so let's dive into that quickly. In the first post-credits sequence, the Eternals on the Domo are visited by 2 people that teleport in. First is Pip the Troll, voiced by Patton Oswalt. In the comics, Pip was created by Jim Starlin in his Warlock title, and was an ally of Warlock. He was an alien. He even once gained control of the Space Infinity Gem, and even after he relinquished it, Pip kept the ability to teleport. In the film, Pip teleports in a new Eternal, Eros, played by Harry Styles, another character created by Jim Starlin. In the comics, Eros is an Eternal from the planet Titan, and literally is Thanos' brother. Thanos was an Eternal who suffered from Deviant Syndrome. In the film, Pip announces that Eros is Thanos' brother as well. Eros was also known as Star Fox in the comics and has served on the Avengers. He has the somewhat creepy powers to control the pleasure of those around him. Finally, there's a post-credit scene of Dane Whitman in his ancestral home. He opens an ancient box to see an old sword. This is the Ebony Blade, the weapon of his comic book alter ego, the Black Knight. The Ebony Blade is a mystical weapon able to defend against supernatural attacks and cut through almost anything. But it holds a curse that the more blood it draws, the more rage it will imbue in its wielder. As Dane tentatively reaches out to the Ebony Blade, an off-screen voice asks if he really wants to do that. And I can't be 100% sure about this, but I'm 90% sure that that voice was actor Mahershala Ali. Mahershala Ali has been announced as being cast as Blade the Vampire Slayer, or Vampire Hunter, one of those two, in an upcoming Marvel movie. If I'm right, that does make a certain amount of sense that Blade, a vampire hunter, would be a bit of an expert on supernatural swords. We shall see. But those are the biggest differences and comparisons that I can make between the film. I'm very curious to hear what you thought of the Eternals film and if there are any Eternals stories in the comics that you are a fan of. So please consider hitting like, subscribe, leave those comments down below, and I'll be back soon with another full episode. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep reading comics. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please consider hitting like and subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, there are merchandise links beneath the YouTube video, and you can always hit join on YouTube or visit Comic Tropes on Patreon to get access to special perks.